Hello everyone, my name is Roya, and I read 6 books in the first half of April. The first 2 I'm going to talk about are DNFs, so I did not finish Red Sister or Practical Magic. I got most of the way through both of them, especially Practical Magic. I actually only had an hour left of the audiobook out of like 8 hours or something like that, so I got really far into it and just decided that it was not worth it. So both of these books, what they have in common and why I DNF'd them, basically just has to do with the lack of any actual stakes, really, or anything like bad, any conflict happening that I cared about at all. So especially Red Sister actually had a really interesting kind of world and what was going on in it and whatnot, but overall just the plot itself was just too boring to really capture me. And I know it's a very polarizing book. You kind of either like it or you don't. It's one of those books where people either like, it shows up on people's best and worst reads lists of the year, I've noticed, all that stuff. But for me, I guess it was a worst. Like there wasn't anything bad about either of these books. I just was not enjoying them, and that's all there really was to it. So most of the books that I read this month were actually new releases, so this wrap-up will be very new release heavy, so I do apologize for that. So one of the backlist books that I read is The Bell at Sealy Head by Patricia A. McKillop. This was actually my pick for my readathon, the Unicorn Readathon, because it has tons of magical creatures on the cover of this book. So this book is about a small town called Sealy Head where there's this bell that rings and no one knows where it's from or where that bell like ringing comes from, because there's no physical bell associated with it. So there's kind of this rumor going around that maybe it's from a sunken ship. Like there are all kinds of stories like that. And no one actually knows where it comes from. So this book is super good. It's so weird. It's very like, it feels like a weird dream almost. It's very, very weird, but it's so good. Even though it has nothing in common whatsoever with the other Patricia A. McKillop book that I've read, which is The Forgotten Beasts of Eld, it still had a very similar vibe. Like you can kind of tell they're by the same author, which is kind of interesting because they are completely different. Like they're nothing alike. But yeah, this book is great. Definitely check it out. The other backlist book that I read this month is A Memory of Light by Robert Jordan, which is the last book in the Wheel of Time series. I can't believe I actually finished the series. It's insane. And it didn't take me as long to listen to the audiobook as I thought it was going to. I thought I'd have to be checking it out a couple of times. Such a good book. It was super sad, all that stuff. So there's definitely, you know, it's the last book in a 14-book series. What do you expect? So I can't really talk too much about what it is that happens in it, but it is still definitely one of my favorite books in this series. It's really weird and really good and really melancholy and all kinds of stuff. I mean, of course, it's like the last book. So if you have read this book, are reading this book, whatever, and you would like to chat with us at our live show for the Waddle Along Read Along, that will be on my channel with Jade and myself, and we will be talking about it at 10 p.m. or 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on May 11th. Now on to the new releases that I read this month. Most recently, I actually just finished The Raven's Tale by Kat Winters. This is about Edgar Allan Poe and his muse. Edgar Allan Poe's muse is this like really grotesque looking girl with raven feathers for hair and like ash for skin and whatnot. But Edgar Allan Poe is very opposed to anyone seeing her or associating her with him because he doesn't want anybody to know that he writes really dark stuff. So it's such an interesting concept, and I absolutely loved this book. I actually gave it 5 stars, and it is just incredible in so many ways. There will be a review of this. I'm not sure when this video is going up, but I will be reviewing this on release day. If it may already be up or it may be coming up tomorrow. It just depends on when this video that I'm filming right now is going up. So yeah, just stay tuned for that. Also, I read this from NetGalley originally, and I read almost half of it from NetGalley, and then actually the publisher saw that I was someone who had gotten an arc on NetGalley, so they sent me this finished copy. So I read the rest of it in physical form. So thank you so much to Abrams for sending this my way. The other 5-star read of the month was Like a Love Story by Abdi Nazemian, and he is one of my favorite authors, so I knew I was going to love this book, but it blew me away so much more than his other books. Even though I love all of his books, like this one just absolutely blew me away. So this arc was sent to me by Adib Khorram, who is the author of Darius the Great is Not Okay. So thank you so much to Adib Khorram for sending me this. So yeah, he reached out on Twitter saying like, hey, are there any queer person of color reviewers who want this copy? And I was like, oh my gosh, me, please. Like, I'm queer and half Iranian, you know, you want to give it to me. So anyway, I'm super happy that I got to read this early, and I will have a review up on release day. I'm like so stoked to be able to tell people how amazing it is. And I already pre-ordered it as well, so I am going to get a fancy copy. But anyway, so this takes place in 1989 when the AIDS epidemic was kind of at its worst, and when it was still a horrible time to be queer. So it follows 3 teenagers, and it follows Reza, who is an Iranian immigrant, and he is really in the closet, and he's basically suppressing the fact that he's gay as much as he possibly can, practically. And then it also follows Art, who is an out gay teenager, and he's like the only one who he knows is gay. And then his best friend, Judy, who is basically just a badass chick. I loved so many things about this story, and obviously I will go into a lot more about what I loved about it in my review, and you can also see my Goodreads review. It talks about a lot of things as well, but mainly I thought it was crazy to see just how bad it was for queer people back then. Like, it was horrible. And then all the stuff that Reza goes through in this book, where he even has a chance to get together with to start going out with the boy that he likes, and he just flat out says like, oh, sorry, like, you must have misunderstood, I'm not gay and stuff. He like just denies it, and it's so heartbreaking. And all the stuff that he does to kind of like almost try to convince himself that he's not gay, all kinds of stuff, like, it makes me think of everything that, all the early signs that I saw that I was queer that I didn't think about. And I realized after reading this book, it wasn't just me like not realizing it, it was me just flat out denying shit. So definitely everyone who's queer and questioning should definitely check out this book. And then obviously, like all of his other books, this has really great friendships in it, and like all of his other books as well, a really great relationship story that doesn't give us a like, these people are gonna practically get married and stuff. Like, it doesn't give us the definitive happily ever after, and that's one of the things that I really like about his books, just because it's so much more satisfying. Because you know how when you watch like a romantic comedy or any kind of movie where like 2 main characters get together and it's like this epic love story, and you're like, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna get married and blah 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 by the end of the book, and then you kind of go, what if they broke up like a year after the movie ended? Like, you don't really know. But in Abdi Nazemian's books, these are all like relationships that even though they're really well developed, well written relationships, they don't give us the whole happily ever after, so they seem more real and more interesting. The parents in this book were also very interesting, because for the most part we get parents who redeem themselves and become invested in, like, they help their kids in the end, but then obviously one set of parents doesn't, because some parents don't. Some parents are toxic. You know what I mean? So they couldn't just all magically be like perfect parents all of a sudden and come to an understanding. So this book is just such a real and heartbreaking portrayal of what, you know, queer history and what things were like back then, and it's so weird, and you'll just have to stay tuned for my review because I have so much more to say about this book. Holy shit. So one of the first books I read this month was Once and Future by Corey McCarthy and Amy Rose Capetta. This is a gender-flipped queer retelling of King Arthur in a sci-fi world, and it is really good, but it also was a little bit disappointing to me. So this was also one of my most anticipated releases of the whole year, in the top 5. And I did still give it 4 stars because I love how queer it was, but some stuff just felt very underdeveloped about it. So we didn't quite get enough world building or character depth, really, and there was even a part where one of the main characters gets separated from the rest of the group for a year, and then it didn't really feel like a year actually passed for the rest of the people because they are still in the same place doing the same thing and whatnot, so it seemed kind of like that didn't seem like it lined up completely. So it seemed kind of weird to me, like a lot of stuff just wasn't quite, it seemed really convenient. But overall, I actually did really enjoy, like I said, the queer aspect. There were some really interesting quotes in this. There was even one where, you know, Merlin even says something about, like, oh, sorry, I misgendered you. Like, where I come from, we make assumptions based on people's physical characteristics. And then Ari says, ew, that sucks. And I thought that was, that was actually pretty great. Overall, I do hope this book does well. I do think that it is worth the read. I just didn't quite, it just wasn't completely meeting my expectations. And finally, Wicked Saints by Emily Duncan. So I do have a full review up of this already. This book was interesting. It had some interesting concepts, but overall the pacing was super weird. And of course we have the surprise villain. And basically, if you want my further thoughts, you can check out that review. But I liked it, but I didn't love it. And it basically ended up being an okay-ish, like good-ish read. So those are the books that I read in the first half of the month. So let me know if you've read any of these and what your thoughts are, and of these new releases if you haven't gotten to them yet, if they're ones you're excited about, and let me know what your favorite book is that you've read so far this month, and I will see you soon with a new video. Bye!